on Vital Signs this week.
Try to find solutions to problems experienced by TB patients. TB remains one of the world's deadliest infectious killers, while South Africa and the rest of the world continue to battle with the COVID-19 pandemic. Each day, nearly 4,000 people lose their lives to TB and close to 28,000 fall ill with this preventable and curable disease.
Catch Vital Signs Saturdays on the SABC News channel from 9 a.m.
Kwanelo Khafona, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
Aphumelele Mhlalane for SABC News.
Ishmael Mudiba, SABC News, Baines Plain.
SABC News, Bloemfontein City Hall. Kamogelo Sekwi, SABC News, Neville Hill, Bloemfontein.
This is where our stories happen. These are the faces and voices of the Free State. Telling stories that reflect our diverse society and the times in which we live. We bring you all the news and perspectives from the seat of the Supreme Court of Appeal. Trust us to deliver comprehensive and unbiased news and current affairs. SABC News, independent, impartial.
Well, May the 3rd is World Press Freedom Day. Today we discuss media freedom in Africa. We also discuss how South African musicians have reached the fans in times of apartheid and also in present-day South Africa. Well, hello and welcome to Media and Society right here on SABC News, independent and impartial. A good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Now, this is where we look at the intersection between media and audiences. This show, of course, is not complete without your say. So connect with us via our social media channels to share your views and concerns about how the media works and what we feed you. Hashtag SABC Media and Society. And you can also call us on 011-714-6841 or 6842. So in 2 days' time, we will be observing World Press Freedom Day. Now, in 2020, Relief Wed had mentioned that journalists' freedom to report was affected a great deal by the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, now it's 2022, and in Africa, we still hear of journalists who are behind bars for the work that they do. And some allege that their digital devices, such as mobile phones, have been hacked. But before we get into that discussion with our guests this morning, in Zimbabwe, an award-winning journalist and anti-corruption activist, Hopewell Chinono, says he's being harassed by members of the ruling party who are lying when they say that he was a beneficiary of a government goat project. This is what he had to say.
Getting harassed beginning of this week by a national executive member of the Youth League of the ruling party, ZANU-PF. He went on social media and he lied that I was a beneficiary of animal scheme by the government, and he said I was given those goats I could pass them on to my community, which was not true. I never benefited from any such scheme. I bought my goats, as you mentioned in your introduction, in Niger, in South Africa, and I've produced the paperwork. But the whole idea has been caused because I went to Geneva and spoke about the health delivery system in Zimbabwe and how it has collapsed at the United Nations. And ever since I came back to Zimbabwe, I'm being harassed every day. The national newspapers, which are controlled by the government, have been churning out stories every day, lying about different things to do with my life. The idea was to taint and delegitimize my work as a journalist, as an anti-corruption activist.
And is that the only reason you are hearing, or could there be more than your speaking engagement? Is there more here?
That's the main reason that they've put forward. The national executive member of ZANU-PF Youth League, called Taurai Kandishaya, actually mentioned that on social media, and he said, we are going to expropriate your goats and you should go back to Switzerland where you spoke, which means, which points towards the fact that they are upset that I spoke about the health delivery system, that there are no cancer machines in Zimbabwe today. There's no working cancer machine in all public hospitals. So if a doctor were to do a diagnosis of cancer and prescribe the patient to go for radiotherapy, they would die. 2,500 women die every year in Zimbabwe because there are no enough maternity theaters. The biggest hospital in Zimbabwe only has 2 maternity theaters and only 1 is working. And because of that, Zimbabwean women have had to cross the border into South Africa. The Home Affairs Minister of South Africa, Dr. Motswedi, said that 75% of women who are giving birth at Messina Hospital are from Zimbabwe. And those are the issues I was addressing and explaining that they have been caused by the looting of public funds and the plunder of the nation's natural resources. And ever since I came home from the United Nations, I've been harassed, I've been insulted. The government newspapers have been churning out propaganda every day, you know, different stories insulting me. And the culmination has now come to this, where they are saying tomorrow they are going to my rural village where they want to expropriate without compensation my goats.
Yeah, well, remember that you at home can also be part of the conversation by asking questions to our guests or simply by sharing your views on today's topic. Once again, you do that by giving us a call on 011-714-6841 or 714-6842. You can also be part of the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag SABC Media and Society. Well, joining us to talk about media freedom ahead of World Press Freedom Day is Ngaba Machazi, who is the Regional Campaigns Coordinator at the Media Institute for Southern Africa, or MISA. And we're also joined by South African veteran journalist Sophie Mokoena, who is SABC International Editor. Ngaba, I think let's start with you. A very good morning. I want to start from the very beginning and say, viewers watching and they're thinking, why is World Press Freedom Day even something for us to celebrate, or perhaps the better word to use is observe?
Maybe just to take it from your question, my favorite line is from the Washington Post. Their payoff line is, democracy dies where light is not shown. So if you're looking at it without press freedom, with journalists being killed, with journalists being arrested for their jobs, there's no one who's going to shine a light in dark places, and that means journalism dies in such an environment.
I want to almost look at
democracy dies in such an environment.
Yeah, I got that point. I want to almost look at, I know that you do your work from a regional point of view. We had that package earlier where we talked about Hopewell Chinono and all the challenges he's been going through in Zimbabwe as a journalist who's been in and out of prison as well for the work that he does. Where are the real issues, particularly in the region? And if you can extend a few examples perhaps for us, where we're not seeing journalists be able to do their job freely?
In your package, I think, or earlier, you spoke about how COVID had affected journalism. What has happened in Southern Africa is most countries have introduced laws that criminalize the publication of falsehoods. I think it started with South Africa, then it moved to Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Angola, etc. And with that, you find people like Hopewell being arrested because they allegedly published falsehoods. You'll find that people like in Tanzania, a number of newspapers were shut because they published allegedly published falsehoods, particularly under the former president John Magufuli. So what you see is that there is a clampdown in free speech in Southern Africa. Even countries that are normally seen to be democratic, like Botswana, also introduced laws that have seen journalists being spied upon with digital surveillance and stuff like that. And there's no access to information laws in most countries, for example, Botswana, Namibia, and Zambia, which are beacons of democracy in Southern Africa, besides South Africa, of course. So what we see is that there's a systemic clampdown on press freedom in the region. And also, finally, just to wrap up this point, is in 2000, Southern African countries came together in Maputo and agreed to come up with laws that preempt social media, particularly publication of falsehoods on social media, particularly before elections. So what we see is that this is systematic. It's moving from each country to each country. And finally, countries have introduced data protection laws, which again, they seek to criminalize the publication of falsehoods. But research has shown that criminalizing falsehoods is usually a precursor for clamping down on press freedom, because you are denying people the right to say what they want to say. So what we're seeing is that's something that is getting stronger. It wasn't there over the years, but there's a big movement towards criminalizing journalism in the region.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about the region, and I think that as South Africa, we're watching and we're wondering as well, where do we stand where press freedom is concerned? And I think to talk about that accountability, we need to clean up in our own house. How does MISA rate press freedom in South Africa?
Well, South Africa is usually a leader, but then what we've seen in South Africa is over the past few years is that we are seeing South Africa also going down the rankings in terms of press freedom. We know that there was surveillance on journalists in the Riker case that was at the Constitutional Court. We know when there was violence during the protest last year. In July? July,
yes.
A number of media houses were attacked, including the SABC. Yes, including the SABC. So we see that while South Africa is, well, not quite the leader, because the leader has been Namibia, and Namibia has asserted this position as the number one in terms of press freedom. But what we're seeing is a worrying case in South Africa where, while it was the beacon, it is slowly sliding down. I gave an example of the surveillance on the Daily Maverick report, on the Amapungane reporter who was doing an investigation, which was illegal. So what we're seeing is South Africa is slowly losing its position in terms of being a leader, in terms of democracy, in terms of freedom of expression. And it's a worrying sign, because other countries, for example, where I come from, at least if you can say, look, there are other countries in the region that are doing it well, like South Africa. But if South Africa is sliding down those rankings, then we have no we have no beacon, we have no one to look forward to.
Yeah, I want to bank this for later. I want to bank this for later. But if Ngaba is essentially saying that the example is Namibia, perhaps in a few moments we should really talk about what Namibia is doing and what the lesson then can be for the rest of the region. But we've got South African veteran journalist joining us on the line as well, Ms. Sophie Mokoena. Mokoena, a good morning to you. You have been one of those journalists that I think we followed your career for a very long time in the country. Over the years, have you seen a decline in press freedom, particularly in South Africa?
Well, yes, it depends who's in power and the supporters of a person who is in power. I must say, post-1994, I started to be a journalist July 1994. At that time, the head of state was Nelson Mandela. There were challenges here and there, but Madiba was quick to accept and apologize where perhaps there had been tension between media and the government of the day, including the ruling party. And then came Mbeki, there were also tensions here and there, but these were being handled because at that time during his tenure, it was a standard practice that he would have a meeting with SANEF all the time, where at that time people like Dade Matata Tsedu and them will be able to express their views and spoke about then the challenges media is facing and where media was aggrieved. Then came President Zuma, there were those meetings, but tension was very, very high. And today you have a new president. There isn't much, but still, because of people sometimes who support a leader think they are doing a right thing by attacking media in defense of the incumbent. So sometimes it is the supporters or members or followers or people who are supposed to speak on behalf of that newsmaker, like your media people around a particular newsmaker, where they will be thinking they are proactive by lambasting media when they are not happy about the report. And then the other issue, we tend to focus on politicians and government, but there's also a problem of citizens of respective countries who also join in the attack of the media. The NGOs, they do the same. Some of them, they do attack the media. And therefore, the challenges faced by the media, it is not only located within political parties or newsmakers who are politicians and government, but many other sectors of society, even business, when people are exposing corruption in business. Because let us be honest, for a politician to be corrupt, there must be a business person or a company that is asking that politician
and
to do something.
Let me step in here, Memokwena, because essentially the job of journalists is to dig up that information, and this is why we talk a lot about just how dangerous it is to be a journalist. We talk about that a lot here on the show. I wonder, though, because with Ngaba, now we're talking about the challenges here in South Africa. I wonder if these issues are really South African or African issues, and these patterns that you've talked about of political influence really are global challenges as well.
They are global challenges. Let's take, for example, right now, the war in Ukraine. How many journalists have died in the line of duty, doing what they are supposed to do to inform the world about the plight of ordinary Ukrainians who are dying in Ukraine? Take, for example, Russia. When this war started, a decision by Russia to ban certain media houses in Russia because Russian authority or the authority, Kremlin, felt that they are not reporting what Kremlin wants them to report. There is nothing wrong in having people who have a different view, as long as those people can give you a right to reply. You spoke about Hopewell Chinono when we started now. To prove that as media, we must also be responsible. Yes, we spoke to Hopewell yesterday. Today at 6:30, we'll be speaking to ZANU-PF spokesperson who will be clarifying or responding. You go to Yemen, you have similar problems. In Tigray, you have problems. On the continent, you do have these kind of problems. And even in the United States of America, during Donald Trump's tenure, we saw tension between the president, then Trump,
and the media.
And the media. Therefore, it is not an African problem. It is a global problem.
And that you talk about that right of reply, that balanced conversation, the nuanced conversation is what counters that narrative continuing across the globe. We're going to take a short break, and perhaps when we come back, we'll talk about the Namibian example and hopefully find some rays of light and where the exemplary patches really are. Stay with Media and Society. We're back in a moment.
Isn't it amazing how many rainy days we've had this summer? But have you ever wondered to yourself, how do thunderstorms develop? Well, thunderstorms develop much like baking a cake. You need the right ingredients. You need your flour, your sugar, your baking powder and eggs. with thunderstorms, the main ingredients are water droplets, you need unstable air or instability, as well as lift, which is a force that's going to bring those water droplets up until they condense and form a cloud. So on a typical morning, you look out, you see cumulonimbus clouds. While they're still small, they look like those popcorn clouds in the sky. Eventually, during the course of the morning and going into the afternoon, they'll grow large enough to become cumulonimbus with an anvil. An anvil is just a fancy way of saying a cap on the cloud. So a lot is happening in the cloud while it's growing, and
welcome back. Well, COSATU will be hosting its May Day celebrations in Rustenburg in Northwest, together with its alliance partners today. And ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa is also expected to be in attendance. But let's check in on the preparations. We are now joined by SABC News reporter Nhlanhla Kgatlana, who's there with Soli Phetoe, COSATU Deputy Secretary. Nhlanhla, how are things looking out there?
Well, a very good morning to you, Naledi, and our viewers at home. Well, indeed, coming to you right here from Royal Bafokeng Stadium at the 36th celebration of Workers' Day. But with me, like you already alluded to, I'm with Ntate Pat, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about the challenges of workers. Ntate Pat, thank you so much for your time. I guess the question that I want to pose to you, the first question will be, AMCU has said that, has called or urged workers not to celebrate this day, saying that, this day, the celebration of Workers' Day, should be moved to August. Your comment to that?
Well, on behalf of COSAT, we think that the May Day is very important. It's an international Workers' Day. Therefore, we think that the issue around shifting the International Workers' Day or the May Day to August for us is not correct, because even before that time, many workers died before 1986. You will recall that COSATU in 1986, during the time of the former government, COSATU marched to government and demanded that this day must be declared as a public holiday, so that workers are able to celebrate this day. It's very important to the workers. In that time, a lot of workers died for this day to be declared as a public holiday. And then the president of the ANC, Comrade Nelson Mandela, was able to declare it as a public holiday. We therefore think that the matter that AMCU is raising can be debated as one of the issues that we think that will agree that day to be declared as a public holiday, not as an international or as a workers' day. Because if we do that, it means that we will shift in this to this day of the Workers' Day to the regional issue, not being an international way. So for us as COSATU, this day is very, very, very important, and we think that we must continue to celebrate this International Workers' Day, and in South Africa it's very, very, very important.
Well, another question that I have for you guys will be holding your elective conference this year. In the past term, can you talk to us with regards to what you have achieved as the vanguard of the workers?
Well, there are a lot of issues. The vanguard of the workers is South African Communist Party. COSATU is the Workers' Trade Union Federation. There's a lot of issues that we can achieve. It is this federation that demanded the national government led by the ANC to convene the National Job Summit in 2018, so that we are able to put our facts and we put our position, we put our proposal there, and that is why the business people, including government, made a commitment that they will protect the current jobs and then make sure that they create jobs. But after that, unfortunately, some of the business people have these things, what is called an investment strike. It was COSATU who felt that the ANC government must convene a national investment summit. But we realized that there was a lot of money that was not used to create jobs, that those were employers who are also not respecting the agreement that was signed at the National Job Summit, but also at the investment summit. So one of the other issues that we can talk, you will recall that COSATU was engaging, it is this federation in 2003 where we took a decision about the National May Day, the National Minimum Wage Act. It was not easy for us to achieve the National Minimum Wage Act. Today, you talk about over 600 million workers who are benefiting to this national minimum wage. Today, you talk about the domestic workers who are, their wages are equalized today, 23.19 cents per hour. Previously, you would have not have those things. Yes, we know there are still employers who are undermining some of the act that we have, and therefore we think that it is our responsibility as a federation to continue to fight. That's why we said this May Day in all the 8 provinces, it must be a militant federation. We must build a unity of the workers under one federation. That's why we've got a principle called one country, one federation, and we want to continue to fight against the attack to the workers. Yes, there has been a number of challenges that we're facing. The attack to the collective bargaining by our own government, but also the issue that, one of the issues that we have achieved, which was still in that process, is that you spoke about the issue of the cost of living. During the COVID, we were able to see that workers are trapped under serious debt, and that is why COSATU went to government and say, can we use our UIF to try and meet the workers halfway? And remember, the UIF money is not the government money, it's the money of workers, it's a contribution that is done by employers and contribution that is done by the workers. And over 60 billion was able to close. Over 60 billion rand was able to close or pay those workers who were not able to go to work or who were not able to get something. But also, we are in the process, which we have submitted at NEDLEC, that workers must be allowed to cash their 30% of their provident fund. Once that matter is finalized in government, obviously it will be the responsibility of the trustee of the provident fund or the trustee of the pension fund to amend their pension fund act, allow workers to cash their 30%. And that is not a loan, but we also advise workers must not abuse that money, is to try to close their debt, but also to make sure that they've got houses that when they are retiring, when they are no more there, their workers are able to, their families, they are able to benefit from that.
One last question from me. Your reaction as COSATU, I mean, the state capture report just came out. Corruption was blamed as one of the, challenges or something that is exacerbating the challenges that are faced by workers. Your reaction to the report that came out and was handed over?
It is this federation in 2017-2018 that called for the former president of South Africa, Comrade Jacob Zuma, to establish a state capture commission. It is this federation marched to South Africa, to all the areas. Now, our call from the first report, those who are implicated must face the music.
Well, thank you so much. There you go, Naledi. Mr. Apato there saying that, reacting to Peter, saying that reacting to the state capture report that was handed over, saying that those who are implicated must face full might of the law. With that being said, it's back to you in studio.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Nhlanhla Kgatlana, they are a reporter speaking to us from the Royal Bafokeng Stadium in Rusty Dusty, that's my hometown in Rustenburg. We'll take a short break. We still have Ms. Sophie Mokoena and Ngaba as well on the line with us as we observe World Press Freedom Day. When we come back, we'll talk about where the rays of hope are. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, you are still watching Media and Society. Remember to be part of the conversation by calling us on 011-714-6841 or 011-714-6842. On Twitter, use hashtag SABC Media and Society. Still in conversation with Ngaba Machazi, who is the Regional Campaigns Coordinator at the Media Institute for Southern Africa, or MISA, and of course, Ms. Sophie Mokoena, SABC International Editor, as we observe the coming World Press Freedom Day. Just before we wrap up, Ms. Sophie, I think I'm going to close it off with you and say, where's the optimism? Where are we seeing the hope? Ngaba talked about Namibia as the example. Where's the example that you think South African media should be looking at?
Well, there are countries where we can say there's a glimmer of hope. It is not all doom and gloom. Also, in the region and generally on the continent and around the world, there are countries where you can still have believe that looking at how they are conducting themselves, they can be a good example, including South Africa. Much as people can criticize South Africa, the fact that you are on television asking me these hard questions, and I am able to speak, and I am talking now. And then yesterday you saw Hopewell Chinono on SABC News. Today at 6:30 you'll have ZANU-PF responding. Therefore, we can't say it is all doom and gloom, even South Africa as well, and other countries. And therefore, it is up to us journalists to remain vigilant and not to retreat, but also to work together. And where we see challenges, we shouldn't shy away, shining a spotlight on those dark spots. And therefore, you also have lots of organizations and associations that speak on behalf of media, but also who are there to protect the media, both local and international. And therefore, I just want to say, much as there are these challenges, it is not all doom and gloom. Even in Russia, much as there was a decision taken that certain media houses shouldn't continue unless they subscribe to what Russia demanded, you still have journalists who are reporting. For example, we have a correspondent at SABC who always tell us what is happening in Russia in a fair, impartial, and balanced manner. The same with areas such as Ethiopia. We do have reporters there. We are still doing our work. Therefore, it is not all doom and gloom. And to young journalists, I want to say, don't give up, don't be disillusioned, continue to do the work, keep to the basics, fair and balanced, give right to reply.
The important work is to have the difficult conversations, because essentially that's how we inform South Africa, and that's the massive responsibility. But it really is up to South Africans and I suppose consumers of media across the spectrum really to tell us if they trust the work that is being done by the media. But let's wrap this up from a regional point of view. You gave us the example and said Namibia is doing well. What are we seeing there, and what is to be emulated?
Well, I think Namibia is number one, but what Namibia have is strong institutions, a judiciary that is willing to defend the media, and a government that respects media freedom. It's not the best. I mean, it's not where it wants to be. I know there's a lot of room for improvement. For example, Namibia doesn't have an access to information law, and there's something in the works. Once that is improved, worked on, Namibia can even be better. But we are seeing pockets of hope. Zambia with the new leadership. We're seeing pockets of hope even with Tanzania, where the National World Press Freedom Day celebrations are being held. So it's not gloom and doom as Sophie says, but there's so much room for improvement. And what we saw last year is that there was a mixed bag in terms of Southern African performance in terms of media freedom. But there's room for improvement, and even with Namibia, there is room for improvement. Botswana is a good country as well. And South Africa remains a beacon of hope for many of us, although there is that slight, and we want to continue to encourage South Africa to uphold freedom of the media and freedom of expression. But it's not as if it has fallen off the rails totally, but there's room to go back to where it really was in the beginning. 100%.
Ngaba, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it on this Sunday morning. That there is Ngaba Machazi, who is the Regional Campaigns Coordinator at the Media Institute for Southern Africa. And thank you as well to our other guest, Sophie Mokoena, SABC International Editor. Let's take a short break. When we return, we go down memory lane and we look at the contribution that music made in shaping the country that we live in today. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, it is the 1st of May and we are commemorating May Day or Workers' Day. So we'll be checking in with our reporters across the country throughout the day as we look at those May Day celebrations as they unfold. In fact, let's go now to Leboa Khomo in Limpopo and speak to Lutendo Bobodi to see how preparations are looking in Limpopo. Lutendo, how are things looking out there?
Thank you so much. We are here in Liwakomo and we are attending a rally of South African South African Trade Union Federation. It's pretty new, formed in 2017, you remember, and it is now led by General Secretary Zolinzima Vavi. That is about a union federation which is second largest trade union federation in the country, and it of course has members, about 800,000 members from an assortment of industry across South Africa. You know, it has a lot of about 21 affiliates from different industry, but I'm particularly interested in one called JIWUSA, that is General Industrial Workers of South Africa. This of course organizes workers from like your industry, like subcontract workers, pharmaceutical, plastic, farm workers. These are industries where there's a lot of exploitation, and I'm not just taking a stab in the dark. We have reported a lot of stories about this industry these industries where people allege exploitation, a lot of exploitation happening to them. And of course, they are gathering here. They're going to talk about the rights of workers on this particular day. JIWUSA President Mama Atlesibe will be here. That is now a dignitary, one of the dignitaries that will be here addressing workers that of course that have affiliated in our industry. You can see just behind me people here, a few people trickling in. This rally will start maybe around 11 o'clock now, and we'll see who else is coming to address these people.
Yeah. Lutendo, thank you so much for that, and all the best as those preparations unfold. Lutendo Bobodi speaking to us there from Leboa Khomo, and he'll be bringing you the celebrations as they unfold in Limpopo throughout the day. So do stay with the SABC News. Well, we're commemorating a lot really over the next few days. South Africa, in fact, commemorated Freedom Day last week on the 27th of April. And music was an integral part of the fight against apartheid in South Africa. We all know this. There were songs of protest during Toy Toy marches. We know some of those. But then, of course, there's the stories around how musicians would have clever encoded messages. So apartheid censors would still play their songs on radio. Great examples are, perhaps think of Yvonne Chaka Chaka's I Am Winning My Dear, which in fact was what she intended to write was I'm Winning Mandela. Chico Twala had a song called We Miss You Manelo, which in fact was We Miss You Mandela. So we spoke to legend Sipho Hot Sticks Mabuse to tell us about that very crazy time.
Music started becoming part of the weapon that we could use to advance the struggle through the music. And some of us would just write songs openly. You know, I had written an album called Chant of the Marching. Chant of the Marching was banned in South Africa. Now, we had a system in South Africa which scratched records. You know, they put a needle across, and because these people did not understand what being subversive would have been at that time. So anything that they considered subversive and badly influential to our people, they would just ban. We were dealing with a system that was ruthless, you know, and until such time that people understand the environment in which people, so it was very difficult to be, you know, overt in the kind of music that we write. So we have to, you know, be covert in how we write political statements such that our people would understand but at the same time, the system that was oppressive. So it's not all musicians really who were part of the political struggle, but rightly, as you say, most music played a very critical role because, music is in a position to influence multitudes of people. People listen to music, and the kind of music that you would make will invariably influence how people respond to their circumstances. So we were in a space, given that we came from high school and we interacted a lot with we grew up with the guys who were already in the liberation struggle. I came from Orlando West, and Orlando West was the bedrock of political resistance. I mean, if you speak about Orlando West, there's where Nelson Mandela was, Babi Sisulu, Dr. Mtuping, Duma Nokwe, and the younger generation, people like Tokyo Sekwale, Sipio Nyanda, and so on. The list is just, Mama Winnie was part of it, Mama Nchina, Masisulu as well was part of. So the influence of music became critical in how we created our music.
Such a walk down memory lane, and our producer leaving there having a great time hanging out with a South African musical legend. Now, while Encoded Messages made sure that the music of the day gets to be heard by fans on radio, today, many musicians say that they don't even need radio to reach fans. Many piano musicians, for example, speak about how their songs would become popular and cross continents without any local radio airplay. But because of the internet, with platforms like Spotify and TikTok and its challenges, YouTube and others, musicians are able to reach across the spectrum and across the globe. But to look at the challenges of South African musicians in reaching their fans then and now, I am joined by Dr. Sipho Sithole, who is a historian and a founder of the label Native Rhythms. Babu Sithole, a good morning to you, Dr. Sithole. An absolute pleasure having you on Media and Society. We had that package a little bit early on with Ndate Sipho Hot Sticks Mabuse. We talked about how back in those days, pre-1994, musicians had to be very clever in reaching the fans. What are some of those standout moments for you on how musicians were able to shape the country but also be very smart about doing it?
Interesting enough. Firstly, welcome back to the public broadcast.
Thank you.
And welcome back to South Africa from Cape Town.
Thank you, Babu Sithole.
Coincidentally, today is International Workers' Day, or as we call it, May Day. So it's about the workers. And in 1964, on the 6th of November, Vuyisile Mini, who was a unionist, an activist, and a singer, were sent to the gallows. There were three of them. It was him and Wilson Kainga and Zenakile Mgaba for underground work and activism in the ANC and Umkhonto weSizwe. And I'm sure you know the song Nansi Ndoda Emnyama Ferevut. Nansi Ndoda Emnyama Ferevut. Nansi Ndoda Emnyama Ferevut. So Vuyisile Mini is known as one of the foremost composers of the struggle songs. And when they went to the gallows, they broke into song. Now, we're talking about music being censored and talking about hidden transcript and hidden messages. People like Vuyisile Mini didn't even have to hide it. They just want Fervut that one day Ndoda Emnyama, really the black race, I don't want to say the black man, the black race will revolt and they will claim this country back. And it just shows that music has always been in the forefront of conscientizing the masses, the nation, and individuals and communities at large. And Miriam Makeba, you would know that she spoke in 1963 at the United Nations General Assembly. They could have sent an activist or a politician, but they sent a musician and a singer-songwriter to highlight the plight of the suffering of blacks in South Africa. So, you know, I was also reminded by a song by Sakile, Isililo, released in 1982. And that album actually was the first album of Isakile, if I remember. Tema Mkiza was still alive today. Kamashang was still alive today. We're part of that band. So was Sipho Kumete and Matole, the guitarist, is still alive today. And they released this song. Wesililo, ukumingo lovane ufilu muntu sakale huseni. Meaning there is the person has been shot dead and is being carried, you know. And people have always been brave under the circumstances. And these musicians wrote these songs. And as I was hearing my friend speaking earlier on, of course there were full-time officials employed by the state, working for the state broadcaster, which is now we call a public broadcaster, listening to each and every song and deciding which song was good enough to be heard and which song was not enough, you know?
Yeah, but let me jump in. I'm sorry to jump in, but I need to do this because, you know, one of the criticisms I give very often is that we have this history of musicians that have been very strong about having these political messages, and then we look at the music, the way it sits right now. I'm a piano reaching the globe, and I know that a lot of your academic research has been on younger generations post 1994 and whether or not that responsibility is still there. I mean, I go back to Athama Fokate Bas, Don't Call Me a K Word. That was young people. Are young people still doing that?
No, I'm glad because I wanted to lead to that because you were talking about social media, they don't need radio. And because what it means when you say musicians don't even need radio or television today, it means they don't have to worry about whether they will be censored or not. But are they still then using the mic? You know, I just wrote an article for a journal in Washington, D.C., which was released early this year in the Global Hip Hop Journal. And my article is scathing on Kwaito and hip hop. Actually, it's called Two Genres, One Mic. Is it a Kwaito jive or a rap party? The revolution betrayed. I'm basically saying that young people today have got the mic, and it does not look like they understand the power of the microphone that they have to use it to construct messages through their music, to highlighting the plight of people in communities, vulnerable groups, what is happening in South Africa today, the corruption, the looting and everything, and yet they are busy just dancing to the beat, you know? And it's like you would ask them, what is happening? Can you see? Because the role of the musician is to look at society from outside
and to mirror it back
and look at inside. And then analyze and talk and remind us or alert us of things that we might not be aware of. But that is not happening because they are dancing.
Hey, thank you so much for speaking to us. Hey, Sisenking and Gimpela, that's Dr. Sipho Sithole, an absolute pleasure speaking to you. He, of course, is the founder of Native Rhythms, reminding even young musicians that you've got the microphone. That means you've got power. Use it in the right way. Let's take a short break. We'll continue with the May Day celebrations, but thank you so much for joining us. And of course, watching Media and Society. We hope that you'll join us again, same time, same place next week. Stay with SABC News as we observe May Day. Have yourselves a blessed Sunday.
Nimrod Sibila never thought that what